No, it could be called that programme that comes on at 6 o'clock. The 6 o'clock nose.
I think what they really love is doing the actions, and also I thought it was amazing how quickly they could pick up the poems.
This is the hand that touched the frost that froze my tongue. Ow! And made it go numb. This is the hand that cracked the nut that went in my mouth and never came out. Oh. I often think poetry is a very physical thing, isn't it? It's physical because you can do actions with it, but also even rhyming and the rhythms of them, it's a very physical thing, isn't
Definitely.
it?
Something's plastic, something's drastic.
My nose is made of plastic.
Something's plastic, something's drastic.
My ears are elastic.
Something's plastic, something's drastic.
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. Lovely. And now they're drawing me. This is quite scary. Pantomime has never been so popular and still breaks box office records all over the country. Its origins can be traced back to the 16th century. And here in Nuneaton, they're putting on The Pied Piper of Hamelin, one of a dozen or so fables and folk stories that are drawn on for this Christmas tradition, because at the heart of a good panto is a cracking good story.
Down at number 36 lived Dorothy and Stan, who tried to kill 100 rats with a frying pan. But every night, at least one bite the rats ensured they made, until at last they got their sweet revenge and passed to them the plague.
In terms of writing the story, what we do is we'll always go back to the origins. So, for example, with the Pied Piper, just a ton of research, really. Get as much information off the internet, from the library, on the original stories.
But what can be done, I hear you cry, about this plague of rats? They surely know the answer is to fill the town with cats.
We then write our own story. We start from scratch. We try and take on board as many of the original elements of the story. And we can spend something like 6 to 8 weeks just writing almost a plan, if you like, a synopsis, a storyline, an outline.
His gown is made of cat.
If the story is weak, I think people kind of tend to lose interest.
The sooner we rid the town of rats, the sooner we can get back to normal around here.
Oh, very well, Oppo. Sophie, in you come, my dear. Way past your bedtime, you'll have bags under your eyes.
I'm coming, Father, I won't be long.
I think it's a really important sort of theatrical experience for most children and parents alike. It's one of those first sort of times that a child will go to the theatre. I think it's really quite magical. The songs, the bright costumes, I think it's a really, really magical time.
The dame forges this fantastic bridge between the audience and the stage.
Shall I?
I think that, from a performer's point of view, is very, very exciting. Some people find it very, very frightening, but I quite relish that, to be perfectly honest.
Can this man deliver 100,000 filthy rats and send them down the river?
Panto now offers pure family entertainment that caters for everybody from a 6-year-old in the family to grandma, you know, and everyone can come and enjoy it as a family.
What does Christmas mean to you? For many, it meant sitting down and watching the Queen's speech on TV. Not in my house, we were staunch Republicans. It's a royal tradition that began with a radio message 75 years ago that probably doesn't mean much to today's teenagers. But one school in Birmingham thought that it would be a perfect way to get their students thinking and writing about the year they've just had.
What we're learning to do today is construct an alternative Christmas message, OK? We're going to be thinking really closely about our audience for the Christmas message and also the purpose of what we're doing.
So did Christmas mean very much to your students before you began?
In the school where I teach, the
students are from a whole range of different cultures, so I wondered how much Christmas would mean to them. And when I asked them about that, it seemed to have significance for them. Even if it didn't have religious significance, they really saw it as a time for family and a time for celebrating the togetherness of their family in that way. I'm going to give everyone a very small piece of coloured paper, okay? And on that piece of coloured paper, I want you to write one key word that springs to mind when you think of Christmas. So just one word that you're thinking. They already had some of the key words in their mind, and then they started to develop that in more detail. So they wrote down 3 statements, and then we shared those among the class.
Christmas is a time when family gets together. Christmas is a time to reflect on past events, and Christmas is a time of giving and receiving.
They started to reflect in more detail about that idea of kind of looking back and looking forward, so thinking about positive things about the year, things that they'd like to change about the year if they could travel back in time, and also hopes for the year ahead.
I changed the floods that happened in summer because, well, people are still homeless now, and when we're going to be sitting at home in Christmas, like celebrating with the family, these people are going to be homeless and they won't have no way to celebrate Christmas.
It was interesting how quickly the bigger issues came up, that people weren't just thinking about their year personally, they started to think about events in the news, and I was pleasantly surprised how in touch they were with world events. They built on their debating groups, and they started to think about, well, what do I actually want to say to the UK on Christmas Day? What do I want the content to be? And at that stage I started to encourage them to think creatively and think, well, this is an alternative. It might not just be a standard speech, so it might be a rap, it might be a poem, it might be a performance.
Do you want to hear the same old message with no variety? No. I didn't think so.
One of the poems that I gather was really quite emotional, quite a difficult area for this student to get into.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, really, that she'd written such a reflective poem in such a short space of time, and it was just reflecting on the idea of thinking about people that you've lost during the year at Christmas time, and that it can be a sad time as well as a happy time.
Those you love go high above, and on Christmas they come down encased in white snow. They come visit you when you feel alone. They tame the fire to dry your tears. They want to be there and make sure you're okay. They are by your side on that Christmas day when you feel most alone. They're always by your side. Oh.
Looking back on it all, how would you sum up what you all got out of it?
They had a chance to really reflect on some kind of moral and philosophical issues as well, and just think about kind of the wider meaning of Christmas, really.
My name is Borat,
and they did have a few laughs along the way too.
Me coming from Kazakhstan, and I have kidnapped your queen. She is waiting for me to do a sexy time. Very nice.
Of course, it's not just pantomime that occupies the Christmas stage. Raymond Briggs' magical tale of a boy who befriends a snowman who comes to life is now a strong theatre favourite. And let's not forget that other Briggs creation, Grumpy Old Father Christmas.
Blooming Christmas here again.
Raymond Briggs rarely gives interviews and admits to being a little bit grumpy himself.
Happy blooming Christmas to you too.
So, rather tentatively, I asked him whether he ever gets fed up with being so closely tied to the gloriously bad-tempered Santa he created over 30 years ago.
No, I don't think I'm tied to Christmas. Some of the books I've done are associated with Christmas. Father Christmas, obviously, and The Snowman, of which in the book I don't think there's any mention of Christmas, but the film brought Christmas in.
So have you got a favourite between those two books, Snowman and Father Christmas?
I like the Father Christmas because it's very closely based on my mum and dad's home, the kitchen and everything, and the fact that he goes out delivering like my dad did, in the cold and on his own. So I've got an affection for it for that. But the Snowman was just a made-up thing, so I don't have tremendous feelings about it.
What about Father Christmas? Is there part of you in that? I mean, have you written yourself into it?
Well, other than the fact that he's terribly grumpy, which I am, most of the things one writes are autobiographical, unconsciously. A lot of my things are about a younger, fairly intelligent, middle-classy sort of boy with a father or another figure who's more working class, less educated, and yet they love one another, which is me and my dad, really.
When you think of Father Christmas, you took a stereotype and then turned him into a real person. In a way, that was a pioneering sort of book, wasn't it?
A lot of my things have this thing of fungus, bogeyman, and Father Christmas, and they all start with the idea of having something utterly fantastical, like a bogeyman, like Father Christmas, and yet then assuming they are totally real. Father Christmas, let's say Father Christmas exists. What do we know about him? He's old, we know he's fat, we know he's been doing it for donkey's years. He must be fed up with it. Appalling job, going around the freezing cold at night, going down chimneys for God's sake, filthy, sooty, mucky thing, all alone, all night long. I mean, you can't think of a worse job. So he's bound to be immensely grumpy and very glad to get home again.
Thinking of the snowman, in a way it's a very intimate book, isn't it? I mean, this is a boy who, you know, I think in a way is in love, isn't he? This is a moment of great emotion he has for this.
For the figure of the man, yes.
That he's made.
Yes. Yes, that's true. And somebody else pointed out that it's about death, really. Never occurred to me, but several critical people have said that, because the snowman dies. And I did it a few years after my wife died, so there may be something in that. I didn't think of that at the time. Again, it was just being logical. A snowman exists, and let's assume he can fly because snow comes down out of the sky, so it's not a great stretch of imagination. Imagine him going back up in the sky again. And then in the end, he's got to melt and die, as we all have. So it had some intimation of death in it, I think.
Would you mind, you think, being remembered for just Father Christmas and the snowman? Does that grate a little bit with you? Because after all, you've created so many wonderful
No, I don't
books.
mind that at all. It's a great compliment that anyone remembers the stuff at all. The thing I wanted on my gravestone is a thing my partner's granddaughter said at lunch one day. A bit of a silence fell on the lunch. When she was 3 years, 6 months old, looked across in the silence at me and said, "Raymond is not a normal person," which I thought was brilliant. A little kid of 3.5 saying the words person and normal, not saying, "Oh, he's a funny old man." So I want that on my tombstone. Best compliment I've ever had.
Brilliant. Well, it's nearly time to bring down the curtain on this special edition of Reading Aloud. Just time for a side splitter I saved from my Christmas cracker. How would you describe someone who is afraid of Father Christmas? Claustrophobic. Bye.